Good? Hello, can you guys hear me? Awesome. That's good. As we ask people to come up, you can probably, I don't have anything to set this on, so you're going to have to grab it to speak. I hope that's okay. Thank you all for coming to this dedication ceremony for Prince Mortimer Avenue honorary street sign, which is it's already unveiled. You can see it out the window. Probably easier from the back of the room to see it. And it's been a long time coming, and it's a lot of people that were involved in that occurring, and most of them are here in this room. And we'll say a few words with regards to that. But to kick us off, I'm honored to have Reverend Robin Anderson from Cross Street AME Zion Church start us off with the invocation.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Certainly good to see each and every one of you. And as I look out and see the diversity that's in the room, as we continue to celebrate the Black History Month, which is every day, but we're so grateful and thankful that on this day that we are celebrating the dedication of Prince Mortimer in terms of having a street in Middletown. And I just want to say that we thank God for Middletown because we continue to strive together. We continue to work together. And I do believe that if we continue on this journey, that we will continue to be all that God has created us to be. And all of you are great people, and that greatness comes when we're all able to really work together and affirm each other, no matter who we are, no matter what ethnic background we come from, but to know that we're all in this together. Let us pray. Eternal God, we come today, O God, in celebration, O God. In celebration, O God, for how, God, you have not only continued to bless us and how you have kept us over the years, but on today is a historical moment, O God, that we're able to celebrate the dedication, O God, of a street named after one who gave his life, O God, to continue, O God, to fight for the rights of others, O God, especially people of color. And so, God, as we come together, oh God, as we celebrate and dedicate, oh God, this street, oh God, after Prince Mortimer, God, we pray, God, that will continue to remind us also, oh God, how we all matter, how we need to continue to love one another, how we continue to care for one another, and how we always need to affirm one another. And so, God, we pray that you would continue to bless the town of Middletown, that you will continue to bless our leadership, oh God, that you will bless each and every resident, and that all will know that they do matter. And God, help us to continue to strive and to work together, oh God, for equity, oh God, to continue to strive and work together, oh God, that we might celebrate one another in the great works that you have called each and every one of us to do. So God, we pray that you would have your way in this celebration on today, that when we all leave here today, that we will continue to know that we have much work to do, but we're continuing to celebrate one, oh God, who gave his life, oh God, who was there, oh God, moving and working and shaking, oh God, and making things happen. We love you and we praise you. It's in your great name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Amen. To continue on with the program, I reached out to my daughter, and she knew a poet, and which was perfect for this event. So we asked her if she would give a few words, and she agreed. So I'm going to welcome up poet Grace Figueroa.
Good morning, everyone. It is such an honor to be up here right now. I currently work at Middletown High School, so it was really cool to tell everyone that I was actually going to be up here today. Middletown whispers his name in the wind. Prince Mortimer, bound but never dimmed. Born royalty, but the crown was snatched. Chains on his wrists, dreams barely attached. See, they try to break him, strip him clean, erase his roots, his past, his scene. But you can't kill a burning fire, nor can you drown pride in a Connecticut river. They overworked his hands, back bent, soul bruised, the boy into a man in a world that abused. They sold his body, but not his will. Through silence, he screamed, "I am here still." When I think of this man, his hands come to mind, how he weaved strength into ropes as they became the ropes of time. Skilled and efficient, hopeful and determined, his master made a promise, and that all of this would be worth it. That on his last breath, be it true and honest, that he'd be granted a life he dearly missed. I imagine he stayed positive, although undocumented and forgotten. While the stars had betrayed him, he simply stayed positive. Fast forward now, look at our streets. Clean, right? Different chains, same beats. Systems rigged, justice delayed. For it not the triangular trade, he wouldn't have taught us how not to fade. The stars couldn't keep a great man down. He kept pushing through, using his presence as his battle sound, much like having a new leader with new frustrations, new norms and regulations. Prince was under the radar, still standing, looking at a resilience right in the eye on occasion. Even when he was low, they tested his soul. He held ground, letting the roots grow. That's the way we need to lead. That's the way we need to follow. To never sulk in our sorrows, to rise with heads held high, always reaching for our skies. Thank you, Prince. Poem.
Wow. That was wonderful, Grace. Thank you so much for that. I want to go over, and I'll try to keep it as brief as I can, over Prince's story. But to get to this date with kind of a long journey of research and involving myself and a lot of help from Dr. Jesse Nosta and your Middletown municipal historian, Deb Shapiro. But during that process, the idea came to one of us, I don't remember who, that maybe we should try to do an honorary street name. And there was no ordinance for that, so Debbie and Dr. Nosta started that process, and we were able to get an ordinance for an honorary street name, and then we became the first to apply for that ordinance. And so Prince Mortimer Avenue is the first honorary street name in the city of Middletown, which I'm really proud of. I think that's wonderful. I also think it's wonderful that we're holding the dedication on the first day of Black History Month. I think it has a significance. But to tell a little of his story, sometime in the early 1700s, Prince was captured off the coast of Guinea. We don't know who he was enslaved to for the first decade or two in America, but sometime after 1754, he was purchased by Philip Mortimer, a rich Irishman who owned a rope-making facility that sat not too far from here on Main Street. Middletown was a port town, home to shipbuilders and captains, most of whom were involved in the triangular trade. Prince was trained as a spinner, a laborious but important artisanal role in creating rope. During the Revolutionary War, Prince was said to have been a servant to several officers and had been sent on errands by General George Washington. He's quoted as saying he had straddled many a cannon while fired by the Americans at the British. After the war, Prince remained enslaved. In 1773, Philip Mortimer, the enslaver, lost his wife, 2 brothers, and a sister-in-law to disease, all within 5 days of each other. Having no surviving heirs living in colonial America, Philip Mortimer sent for his niece, Anne, who lived in Ireland. On arrival, Anne married a gentleman by the name of George Starr, a prominent Middletown politician. George and Anne would later become an extreme impediment to Prince Mortimer's desire for freedom. In 1792, Philip Mortimer drafted his will. He decided to free the majority of those he enslaved upon his death, giving some of them money and property, but made an exception for Prince. Due to his importance to the running of the rope walk, the will indicates Prince was to be freed 3 years after Philip Mortimer's death. In 1794, days before his death, Philip Mortimer had a change of heart. He rewrote his will indicating Prince was to be freed immediately on his death, and then he died days later. In 1795, Philip Mortimer's will was contested by his niece Anne and her husband George Starr. Through a savvy legal strategy, George and Anne were successful in having Philip Mortimer's will thrown out. Thus, all assets were now theirs. Adding insult to injury, the 1796 inventory appraisal of Philip Mortimer's estate listed Prince Mortimer as being worth £0, no value. So at 71 years old, over half a century in bondage, during which he had a possibility of freedom twice, Prince remained enslaved, now to George Starr. In 1811, at age 87, George Starr noticed particles in his morning chocolate served to him by Prince. He took this to the authorities, accusing Prince of attempting to poison him with arsenic. Prince was immediately arrested, spending the next 4 months in the Middletown jail. On December 21st, 1811, Prince was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to life in prison. He was sent to Newgate Prison in East Granby. Considered the worst prison in America at the time, Newgate was built on an old copper mine, and many inmates were housed over 50 feet below ground in old caves and caverns. After years of incarceration, and considered a burden due to his age and ailments, Prince is said to have been encouraged by guards to leave and not come back. He once obliged, traveling back to Middletown. But having outlived everyone he once knew, he traveled back to the prison, requesting to be readmitted. In 1827, when Prince was 103 years old, Newgate Prison was closed. All prisoners transferred to the new state prison in Wethersfield. Due to a corrupt warden at the time, many prisoners suffered from poor health. So the state board of directors appointed a prison physician responsible for reporting prisoner wellness beginning in November of 1829. In 1831, Wethersfield prison records show Prince suffered from ailments of the bowels caused by the prison food. He was admitted to the prison hospital where he would remain for a year. Hospital records consistently showing physicians' prescriptions as being serve him better food. After 22 years in prison, Prince died on March 11, 1834. In the attending physician's report, Dr. Alonzo Rockwell says he died of old age. He also states he was supposed, from all that could be gathered relative to his age, to have been between 110 and 120 years old. Wethersfield Prison was closed in 1963. It is now the location of the Department of Motor Vehicles. The former prison cemetery exists under neighboring Cove Park. There's a stone marking the location of the prison cemetery, but there is no certainty Prince is buried there. You see, 10 years prior to Prince's death, Connecticut passed a law allowing bodies of prisoners to be at the disposal of the professors of anatomy in the medical institution of the state, of that state, which it would be Yale Medical School at the time. So identifying what became of the remains of Prince Mortimer is an ongoing effort. Prince's story is one of survival, but more importantly, of perseverance and endurance. An endurance that existed in all of the enslaved, from my perspective, allowing for me to exist today. I see that as something to be revered. The home of Philip Mortimer existed down Rapallo Avenue, which at the time was simply a walkway that led to Philip Mortimer's mansion. For years, Prince walked that long path on his way to work at the Rope Walk on Main Street, enriching the lives and lining the pockets of his enslavers. Today, I can tell you exactly where Philip Mortimer and George Starr are buried, but we have no idea where Prince is. Also, the surnames Mortimer and Starr can still be seen around this town. Down the street is Mortimer Cemetery. Not far from here is Starr Mill Pond, named after the Starr Mill, which was owned by George Starr's relatives. But no injection into the landscape of enslaved individuals by name. Thus, the disparity in individual value persists, propagating through time. Today, that changes. I'd like to thank the mayor, the Common Council, Debbie Shapiro, Jesse Nosta, and everyone else involved in helping us change that depiction. And with that, I'll just give one big round of thanks to everyone who saw it important enough thank you to everyone who saw it important enough to, on their Saturday morning, to come out, brave the elements, and honor a formerly enslaved man. And with that, I'd like to welcome up to say some comments, and I'm incredibly humbled that she agreed to speak, our Lieutenant Governor, Susan Byswitz.
Thank you. John Mills, thank you so much for learning about the life of Prince Mortimer. What an incredibly powerful story. And Grace Figueroa, thank you so much for that very powerful poem. And thank you to all of the many, many people and government leaders who made this possible. Middletown is a diverse place that celebrates its diversity, so I'm very proud that my hometown has decided to celebrate the life and the story of Prince Mortimer. What an incredible life that he lived. And there's some dispute as to how old he was. He could be anywhere between 110, even 120 years old. Imagine that. He lived history. He lived the slave trade that happened right here, down by the river in Middletown, in this city, and across Connecticut. Some people may think, well, Connecticut's a northern state, and we didn't have that. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. And Prince, sadly, lived that life of enslavement. He lived the life of a rope worker, and there was a piece of rope over there, probably like what he made. And what's interesting about rope is that it's a symbol of strength, but it's also something that is a symbol of restraint and slavery. Imagine being wrongly accused of murder, being granted freedom in a document than having it taken away. I have been to Newgate Prison. It is a horrible place. The only redeeming quality that it has is that now it's a place where people who've been in our incarceration system are celebrated when they get out and their achievements in the community are recognized. I am very glad that Tammy Denise of the Connecticut Freedom Trail is here. Tammy, you're going to meet her in a little bit, but Tammy, stand up, because she is someone who recognizes people like Prince all over the state of Connecticut. And if you haven't heard of the Connecticut Freedom Trail, you got to look it up, because there are so many stories about Black Americans who did incredible things across our state. And it's important that we know these stories because they helped us make our state's history. Now, Prince's life was a fight for freedom. And imagine finally being able to leave the hellhole that was Newgate Prison and find your way back, probably after a long walk to Middletown at 103 years old. Imagine that, right? You come back to the town where you lived, and you can't find anyone that you know, and you have to go back to that hellacious place. It's unimaginable. And then to live out the rest of your life eating horrible food and going to another terrible prison. But here's the light in all of that. The light in all of that is the struggle for freedom continues, and we have made such progress, although I'll just say that our freedoms are under attack every day in our state and in our country, and it's up to all of us to fight for the freedoms that we've gained and the freedoms that we haven't. And thinking about where we are today and the Connecticut Freedom Trail, Connecticut has been home to such remarkable people. And another remarkable person, and I bet almost everyone in this room had the honor of knowing him, was Q Williams. And so I hope that you will all join me in supporting Q Williams's home on Breton Road as a new location on the Connecticut Freedom Trail. Tammy will tell you how you can support that important initiative. And that house, interestingly, the beautiful house where Carissa, his wife, still lives, is a house that Martin Luther King stayed in when he was giving speeches at Wesleyan University during the civil rights movement. And of course, many times Dr. King stayed in private homes because hotels were not open to people of color. But how perfect that Q lived there with his wife, and hopefully someday very soon his home will also be a location on the Freedom Trail, because Q's contribution, almost 300 years after Prince Mortimer was born, is that Q became the first Black person to represent Middletown in our General Assembly. And Kai Belton followed shortly thereafter, becoming the first Black female to represent us in the General Assembly. So today we thank Prince Mortimer for his contributions to get us to a better place. But we celebrate Black History Month knowing that there is still so much more work to do. So thank you so much for having me at this very impactful event.
You know, the Lieutenant Governor reminded me, and well, Tammy, you're going to talk about this later, but that this corner is on the Freedom Trail. We haven't done an official ceremony for it yet because we were able to get approved last year a trail within the trail. So it's going to be called the Prince Mortimer Trail. And the trail has 5 locations. One of them is Newgate Prison, one of them is the Weathersfield DMV, and this is one as well. So this is a broader story that will continue, and there will be another celebration once we get panels and plaques and things all aligned, and all 5 of those locations are part of the Prince Mortimer Trail. I hope I instill any of your thunder there, Tammy. No. Okay, all right. Okay, all right, all right. I was looking for like the evil eye or something. Okay, all right. She's still smiling. She's all right? Okay, okay, thank you. All right, and I'm honored to have these individuals here today. I know you both, Lieutenant Governor, I know you have a busy schedule, and this next individual I know you do as well, so thank you for taking the time. So I want to welcome up to speak U.S. Senator Richard Blumenthal.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. What a remarkable day. What a truly historic day. Reverend Anderson and I came this morning from the annual Albert Owens Scholarship Breakfast in Meriden, the annual MLK Scholarship Breakfast, where we celebrate future leaders in the name of Martin Luther King. And here we're looking back to Prince Mortimer and remembering a time that is really not so distant. In fact, still a part of us. William Faulkner once wrote, "The past is not dead. It's not even past." And John, thank you for bringing us together today. Thank you to the Alex Breen Foundation for making the past live again, making history live again for us so we can learn from it. And never forget that injustice remains real and present. So let's say it out loud. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Today in Middletown, we celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion. And let's never forget that America is great because of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there's another lesson to Prince Mortimer's story, and it's one that I will take with me today. 110 years he lived in the most incredibly inhumane and cruel condition. I don't know how many of you, as the Lieutenant Governor said, have been to the old Newgate Prison. It's not a place where human beings can be kept. It's not a place where animals can be kept. It's not a prison. It's an underground series of caves where water drips, and even on the hottest days, it is incredibly cold. To live there, to be kept there, to be imprisoned there, would break almost anyone's will to live, but not Prince Mortimer. He endured, he persevered, a lesson for us today. Even in the worst of times, we know we can preserve our will to fight for justice. Today we are tested, maybe as never before in recent history. And I see it every day where I go to work in Washington, D.C. I'd much rather be here. But your being here this morning sends a powerful message. Our being here this morning, this day in Connecticut, sends a powerful message. We will remain true to the values that we celebrate in renaming this street after a man who was truly a model of courage, strength, perseverance, grace under pressure. I'm proud to be with you today and say again, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Wow. Okay, I pointed out the sign to you guys, right? Okay. My mind is starting to fail, but I just wanted to make sure I did. And if you haven't seen it, I know the angles, it's a little different. If you head towards the back of the room later on, it's a little clearer out the windows. You can see the sign. Next, I would like to welcome up to speak someone who was very helpful to me in trying to drive this to fruition and knew kind of the ins and outs and the workings of Middletown, so became a phenomenal partner in helping us get to this place. That is your Middletown municipal historian, Deb Shapiro.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to see so many people here. Next time we announce an event at the Historical Society, can you all come to that too? 'Cause we can really use a crowd like you. I brought today some hemp rope. This is what Prince spent his lifetime weaving. Nowadays, you mostly see nylon rope everywhere. So I thought even with the younger people in the audience, they may never have seen hemp rope. But he spent every day walking back and forth, pulling the hemp, and the fibers get into your lungs. How he lived to 110 with all that hemp dust in his lungs, I have no idea. People today smoke cigarettes and they die young, but somehow he persevered, and I'll put this on the table so you can all look at it and see how heavy just a small piece of it is. I would like to first start by saying how we got here to this day. And it was almost 2 years in the making. John came to me and said that he had been doing a lot of research on Prince Mortimer and would like to name a street after him. So I first talked to Councilman Nacera, who's the head of the Public Works Commission. And I said, what do you think about having an honorary street naming program in town? And he was enthusiastic. I then sat down with Mayor Florsheim. He was enthusiastic. So then I got to work. I looked up ordinances in other towns to see what kinds of programs they had for honorary street names. New York City, if you've ever been there, there's 1,700 honorary street names down there. So almost every corner you're on in Manhattan and the other boroughs, there's an honorary street name. So I took the proposed types of ordinance to our deputy city attorney, Corey Wisniewski, and the two of us sat down and we crafted an ordinance that we thought would work in Middletown. So then that proposed ordinance went to the Public Works Commission, chaired by Councilman Nacera, and it passed there. So then it next went to the General Counsel Commission, chaired by Councilwoman Jeanette Blackwell, who's here with us today, and it passed that commission. Once it got through those two commissions, it then went to the entire city council, and it passed there. But this whole process to get us through the two commissions and the city council took over a year, because you have to have so many readings. Sometimes the committees don't meet in a month. So anyway, it took a while, but we got it passed. And then the next person to be involved is our head of the Public Works Department, Howard Weisberg, who's there in the back. Thanks, Howard. He devised the application. John filled out the application. It then went back to the Public Works Commission. Then it went to the City Council again. And then finally, everything got approved last fall. And then the sign was made, but we thought, wouldn't it be nice if we did this on the beginning of Black History Month? So Kurt Bjorklund, who was new to the city Public Works Department, is the one who actually put the signs up and got them there. We thought about putting a cover on and dramatically pulling a cover off, but you could see how high that is. And I couldn't, because I was going to tie the cover with the rope. But you could see, being height challenged, I never would have been able to do that. So on a more serious note, I grew up on a farm in Ohio, and I moved to Middletown after I married my husband. I met him in law school in Virginia, so I've been around a little. And I've lived in Middletown now 50 years as of January 1. And I have to say that I thank my lucky stars that I live in this city. This is a city that recognizes its history, not only the good, but the bad, the glorious and the ugly. And it uses that history to teach lessons to our citizens and hopefully our young people coming through the school system. In fact, our middle school is named after the Beeman family, which is an African-American family that, it's a long story, I won't go into the whole story, but they were active on the Underground Railroad in the abolitionist movement. So the kids are learning that history. So that's just a very positive thing. But we need to teach them about all the history, not just the good, but the bad, so that we can keep moving forward to have a just and equitable society. In today's political climate, it is just so much more important, and I so appreciate you having us all chant diversity, equity, and inclusion. And last Monday, I sat down and I cried. I was what? And I said, okay, I better quit or else I'm going to start sobbing. In the words of Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg, it is altogether just and fitting that we do this, that on this day, February 1, Black History Month, that we remember Prince Mortimer. Thank you. One more thing. I would like to present to Councilwoman Blackwell a copy of Dennis Caron's book about Prince Mortimer. Dennis is here, so hi, Dennis. Thank you. Dennis is an attorney, and he researched Prince Mortimer more than a decade ago now, and went through 2 decades ago, and he went through all the court case, and that's all right here in this book. So thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. Dennis is here, and I'm honored that Dennis came, because that book that he published, had published in 2006, is one of the two books I stumbled upon in researching Prince. And I would like carry this book around because I was so shocked, right? I was just reading it everywhere I went. And so, yeah, it grew attached to my side. I'm kind of honored now because after some of the research that I've done over the last few years, Dennis asked to partner with me to write a revision to this book. And so we're going to have a second version of this coming out soon. So look forward to that. Also, in researching Prince, I not only researched him, because if you know anything about researching the formerly enslaved, you have to research the enslaver a lot, because you're looking for documentation where they may have mentioned the enslaved, and then you'll get bits of new information about them. So I did a lot of digging into Philip Mortimer and his family, and George Starr and his family, most of whom now live in Ohio because George Starr received land from his service in the Revolution, and that passed down to his family, and this family still lives in that land in Ohio. So I reached out to all these people, and the Starr descendants were grateful, and they gave me information I didn't know, but they weren't all that proud of George. So they were like, John, you don't have to include us in all that. And I also reached out to Charles Rapallo's family. I found them. And because Charles Rapallo was an attorney in New York, he knew nothing about Middletown. He just knew that his wife was from Boston, and we needed to have a better railroad system between New York to Boston, of course. And he could build one better than what we had. And so, there's this mansion, Mortimer mansion that's in the way. Let's tear that down, and we can build the railroad. And so, so that street is named after him, although he knew nothing about Middletown. But I reached out to his family, and I was like, yeah, we're doing this thing. It's going to be an honorary sign above Rapallo Avenue. And I see it as history, but they weren't all that interested either. But, oh well. But anyways, I digress. Next, I wanted to introduce another individual to speak who's helped me immensely as well. And as a part of this research effort, you run into people that have bits and pieces of the story. And so this person has this piece, and this person has this piece. You're like pulling pieces together. And this individual had pieces that completely shocked me. And so I would like to welcome him up to speak. That is Dr. Jesse Nasta of the Middlesex County Historical Society.
Great, thank you very much. First, I just want to thank and acknowledge John Mills' incredible work. So whenever I talk about John, I've been asked to speak about John Mills in the Washington Post and in national venues. And I always say that his story is really the power of one person's initiative. He's an independent scholar. He's not attached to a university, an existing organization. He realized his own ancestors had been forgotten. His own ancestors' graves had been unmarked and paved over with parking lots, and he wanted to change that, right? And that's how his organization came about. So we're honored that he's doing this work throughout Connecticut and that he decided to bring that work to Middletown as well. So and then it's been an honor. John Mills reached out to me probably 4 years ago already at the Historical Society because he knows about my research on the Beeman Triangle, which centered around the Cross Street Amy Zion Church, of which Reverend Anderson's the pastor, which formed as a free black community in the 1820s and 30s, right at the end of Prince Mortimer's long life. So our partnership goes back about 4 years already. So I'll be brief. As I said, I think John Mills represents the power and potential of one person who cares and takes it upon themselves. And following up on this theme of one person, as many of you know, as many as 12 million Africans were stolen and sold into the transatlantic slave trade between 1500 and 1866. That's 12 million people. Here in Middletown alone, at least 200 were trafficked from West Africa to the port of Middletown on the Connecticut River. When Prince Mortimer was alive, by the end of the 1700s, Middletown was the largest city in Connecticut with 5,000 residents because of the transatlantic slave trade, because of trade back and forth between places like Middletown and the Caribbean. And of those 5,000 residents, at any given time, there were at least 200 enslaved people of African descent, including Prince Mortimer. So when you think about that, if throughout the 1700s at any given time there were at least 200 enslaved people in Middletown alone, every street would be named after an enslaved person if we were to name every individual. And most, sadly, have not been documented. Their names haven't come down to us. So really, Prince Mortimer has to stand in as an individual for millions of people and for thousands of people who were enslaved right here in Middletown alone, which, as you heard before, supposedly people didn't even think had slavery in the popular consciousness, in the national consciousness. So that's a lot of forgotten and ignored people. So it's just remarkable to have this, as you've heard before, that same will where Prince Mortimer was supposed to gain his freedom. By that same will, Philip Mortimer left the land for Mortimer Cemetery, which is still here on Main Street, behind It's Only Natural, right here. It's called Liberty Street Cemetery or Mortimer Cemetery. So over 200 years later, that cemetery remains with monuments to the enslavers. But as you heard, John Mill's been looking for years just to know where Prince Mortimer's body was, and even that has not been documented, let alone a gravestone. So this is a huge, important event to document someone who didn't even have a gravestone at the time, and whose body is now, is still an open question what happened to it. So this is really an important act of justice. And I also think, although the enslaved and freed people of African descent have largely been forgotten in New England, there's a few, quote, exceptional cases that have come down to us. For example, Venture Smith was able to purchase his own freedom. He was a contemporary of Prince Mortimer. So think about how different their lives were. Venture Smith just so happened to be able to purchase his freedom. Philip Mortimer remained enslaved and then incarcerated till he died at 110. Caesar Beeman, the patriarch of the Beeman family, whose son was the first pastor of Cross Street AME Zion Church, he fought in the Revolution just like Prince Mortimer, but when he came home, he was freed and chose the name Beeman to, quote, be a man and not a slave, whereas Prince Mortimer returned to decades more of captivity and incarceration after fighting for American independence. So really, I think the important story here is that not only does Prince Mortimer represent the enslaved, but he represents the majority who never were freed, who were not emancipated, who never gained that sort of recognition, which is so important. Thinking about the long sweep of history and all the pieces that go together, it's very significant. Prince Mortimer died in 1834 in the Wethersfield, Connecticut State Penitentiary at 110. That same year, free black women in Middletown got together at the Cross Street Church and formed one of the first black female anti-slavery societies in the nation. So at the very same year when the long, sad chapter of Prince Mortimer's enslavement and incarceration ended, the free black community that emerged in Middletown had built the Cross Street AME Zion Church a decade earlier, and now was forming one of the first black female anti-slavery societies. And just in closing, the motto of the Middletown African-American Female Anti-Slavery Society was really an anti-slavery motto for the whole abolitionist movement. It's a quotation, it's from Hebrews in the Bible. It says, quote, "Remember them that are in bonds as bound with them, them that are ill-treated, as being yourselves also in the body." So they were saying for those who are enslaved, those who are incarcerated, those who are abused, it's not only empathy, it's you are of one body. You are them and they are you, right? And that's just an immortal, timeless lesson, right? And I think we've heard a lot about the political situation today. In the coming years, a lot of us will be asked to say, well, I'm not an immigrant, so I don't care about immigrants, or I'm not undocumented, so I don't care, or I'm not gay, so I don't care about gay people, or I'm not trans, so I don't care about trans people, or I'm not black, so I don't. So let's all think of ourselves as of one body, and if anyone is bound in rope, or bound politically, or bound socioeconomically, that we are bound with them, figuratively and literally, in one body. So it's not just empathy, it's literally in it together, in suffering and in freedom and in liberation.
You see why I aligned with Dr. Nasta? I was like, this guy's cool. Started calling him all the time. I was probably bugging him. But he's been incredible help to me. So thank you, Jesse. Something he said, I was researching my family. My sister was doing a lot of the leg work, because this is back in the 90s, back then. And we found my second great grandfather, and he was buried in the woods behind a whites-only cemetery in Texas, unmarked, and the whites-only cemetery was still pristine, so he was kind of forgotten. And he was freed on Juneteenth. He was enslaved and freed on Juneteenth. And it was a walk past this whites-only cemetery which struck me. It was like my grandfather walked this walk carrying his parents and his grandparents. He saw this privilege, and they walked into the woods. And I knew my grandfather. He died in '87. It was just a deeply moving moment where I realized that society was reflecting value to him. And then my third great-grandfather, who fought in the Civil War and was buried at Laurel Cemetery in Baltimore. Laurel Cemetery was paved over in the 1960s for a parking lot. And over the years, Coppin State and other universities have done ground-penetrating radar. The bodies were supposed to be moved, but they weren't. There's like 30,000 graves under that parking lot, and that's where my third great-grandfather is, although he has Civil War service. And so it was those things that started to drive me down this path of revering these people, because they dealt with this in life. And then they were segregated and distanced in death. And to have to deal with that made me revere them. That sounds like incredible strength to me. And so I'm hoping that's how we start to tell these stories, not as much as if they're just some sad story, but about how strong these people must have been to endure. So thank you for your comments, Dr. Nasta. This next individual has also been incredibly helpful to me. She has incredible insight with regards to concepts of this topic. I could talk to her forever, just like I could talk to Jesse Nasta forever, listening to their perspectives. She's a curator at the Old Newgate Prison, so I'd like to welcome up to speak Morgan Bengal.
Hi, everyone. I think John gave me 5 minutes. I don't need 5 minutes, but I will not refuse the opportunity to hold a mic and congratulate John Mills, the Alex Brienne Corporation, and everyone a part of this. Because this is wonderful. I am honored and humbled to celebrate Prince Mortimer with you all today, specifically because we are not at Old Newgate. It is much colder there. This is a beautiful center. But more importantly, Prince Mortimer was more than an incarcerated man, and he was more than an enslaved man. This was his town. These are the streets he walked on, and he was a whole person. And today we recognize that. We recognize him as the person he was, honored in this landscape. The work we do at the museum is important. People come there and they learn fabulous history, but what we're doing in these landscapes, what John and his corporation are doing, is bringing these people back to these landscapes so that they're a part of your conscious every day that you're seeing them, not just when you go to a museum to specifically learn history. It is there and it is important, and we must remember it always. That being said, our senator and lieutenant governor painted a wonderful picture of Newgate as a horrendous, inhumane place, which it was. It was. And we honor and recognize that. We love telling Prince's story as one of perseverance, my team and I. But I would love to have you all come and visit us. We are now horrendous, inhumane. We are now a lovely museum with smiling faces. Some of my team is here with us today. So please come and visit us. We reopen as a seasonal museum in May. We not only have a wonderful plaque about Prince, but we do, as Lieutenant Governor mentioned, house the only Connecticut Hall of Change, which honors formerly incarcerated people every year for their contributions to community. So I cannot speak on behalf of Prince, but as someone who advocates for formerly incarcerated men and women, both historic and present, thank you for this work, John, and everyone involved.
Thank you, Morgan. Yeah, you know, the panel that's at Newgate Prison, there's a panel there that specifically kind of tells Prince Mortimer's story, which was just installed just last year. So, yeah, if you go and visit Newgate, you'll get to see that as well as other panels that talk about the disparities of incarceration between the different groups, and it truly is a learning experience in going there. So I do recommend that. Next, there were a lot of people that we had to reach out to get this through Common Council, and I know Deb Shapiro, again, like I said earlier, knew kind of what that process was, and connected me at one point with this individual who's been incredibly helpful as well to getting this through. So I'd like to welcome up to speak President Pro Tempore, did I say that right? Jeanette Blackwell.
And let me just say, is this on? Can you guys hear me? I can't hear myself speak through the microphone. Let me just say that as Mr. Mills was sharing the story of Prince Mortimer, I could hear the deep sighs and the and Lord have mercy. And so I can relate to all those deep sighs. Good morning, esteemed dignitaries, honored colleagues, clergy, guests, and friends. It is indeed a privilege to be here today. I am Jeanette Blackwell, a councilwoman in the city of Middletown. I am also pleased to acknowledge Mr. Mills, Ms. Deborah Shapiro, Dr. Jesse Nasta, and the Middlesex County Historical Society. Thank you for your diligence and vision. This ceremony marks an extraordinary day in Middletown. Further, I am humbled to know that my vote as a council member served a small part in this day coming to fruition. It is gratifying as a public servant to participate in these momentous occasions. Prince Mortimer was an enslaved man who was born in Guinea, Africa, in the 18th century. Like many enslaved people, Prince Mortimer's journey during the Middle Passage landed him on unfamiliar soil, working to boost the economic stability of a community that did not value him as a human being. You see, in the 18th century, Middletown was a thriving port town and the most prosperous settlement in the state. 1/3 of Middletown's residents were involved in shipping and merchant activities. Prince Mortimer performed a job that kept ships sailing, creating wealth for a town that still reaps the benefits 200 years later. Prince Mortimer spent most of his life as someone's personal property. In fact, in 1756, Middletown had the 3rd largest African slave population in Connecticut. Reflecting on Prince Mortimer's life, I am reminded of the book of Job in the Bible. Job's circumstances teach us that even when we cannot understand why bad things happen, we can still trust in God's wisdom and goodness, that even in the face of immense suffering, we must continue to have faith. I am inspired by Prince Mortimer's life and grateful to read about this giant of a man. His life was tragic in many respects, but a testament that we must always endeavor to know the truth. The more truth we know, the more freedom we will experience as an individual, a community, and nation. We cannot rewrite history, yet history must be told in truth. because the truth will always stand all by itself. We honor his life and legacy, as Prince Mortimer's story is one of resilience, courage, and long-suffering. I am confident that he could not have imagined, during those arduous years he spent as an enslaved person, then becoming incarcerated as an elderly man, that one day the city of Middletown would recognize him, that centuries later we would read about him and find a tangible way to say thank you for your sacrifice. As I conclude my remarks, I know that Prince Mortimer's life had purpose. While it was fraught with deep pain, his life demonstrates the power of the human spirit to endure. It is because of Prince Mortimer that all of us are here to pay homage to this great man publicly and collectively, attesting to his worth. A life lived in the shadows. Today we are shining a bright light on his life. Your life, Prince Mortimer, challenges us to embrace our shared humanity as we continue to strive for a more perfect union. Thank you. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you to Ms. Shapiro for that kind gesture. And I want to acknowledge my pastor, Pastor Robin Anderson of the Cross Street AME Zion Church. And thank you, Dr. Nasta, for sharing the rich history of Cross Street.
Miss Blackwell is the one that was reached out to Reverend Anderson and asked her to do our invocation, and I was hoping to have some deep kind of tie to the Black community here as a part of this ceremony, and so that was incredibly helpful. And thank you for reaching out to Pastor Anderson, and Pastor Anderson, thank you so much for coming. This is wonderful. Next, I was going to City Hall one of those many times when we were kind of talking and trying to get the ordinance through, and I pulled up once, and there's a spot for where the mayor parks, right? And I said, oh, that's the mayor's car, and it was the coolest kind of younger person's car, Which first I was like, that's cool, and then I went, I'm kind of old, I think. When you're city officials, you start realizing you're like a lot older than them. But anyway, I appreciate, but anyway, that's just a story. I just thought of that when I thought of it. I'm sorry, Ben. But anyway, I wanted to welcome up to speak Middletown Mayor Ben Florsheim.
Thank you, John. I'll make sure to pass that along to Volvo. They'll really appreciate it. And thank you for your work and for your partnership. This is a tough lineup to follow, but I'm gonna do my best. It's an honor to be here and to look out at this group. I want to say thanks again to the city staff who were involved in helping make this possible, to Corey, to Howard, to our former Director of Public Works, Chris Holden, who's here. If I don't see anybody, I apologize, but it was a group effort, and as Debbie said, it was not one that happened quickly. It wasn't one that happened overnight. That is not how things tend to happen in city government, but thanks to the partnership of a lot of folks in this room, we're all here today. And again, so much has already been said. The story of Prince Mortimer, in so many ways, it's hard to even comment upon it because of its gravity. It is the story of great literature. It's the story of mythology in many ways, but it is our own history. It is our own truth. And the program calls for me to be making reflections here, so I'll try to just talk a little bit about what I was reflecting on as I was hearing everybody speak. John, listening to you talk about the trying to get in touch with the Rapallo family and the Starr family, and how
things have been paved over, literally and figuratively, in this community. Hearing about this story and how unknown it was until the scholarship that has been done has been uplifted through this project and is now going to be reissued and built upon this Prince's story itself, right? I thought of a quote that may be apocryphal, but it was made reference to in a book about the financial crisis that many people might have read called The Big Short by Michael Lewis. It was said to have been overheard in a bar in Washington, D.C. And the quote was, "Truth is like poetry, and most people hate poetry." Sorry, Grace, no offense. I don't hate poetry. I'm leaving out an expletive from that quote between most people and hate. But it's not easy to acknowledge these things. History is like poetry, and there is so much to be learned from that. But there is a reason why so much of this has been buried, because as a culture, as a community, our focus, rightly in many ways, is on progress. It's on moving forward. It's on, we need to build a railroad. It's on how do we take care of one another in a way that tends not to focus on how we haven't taken care of one another in the past, but looks to create a vision of how we're going to work together as a community. And to acknowledge that is a noble and a brave thing. And I'm really grateful, as so many people have expressed, to live in a community where we do get a big crowd on a Saturday morning at the beginning of Black History Month to acknowledge the progress that we have made, to acknowledge the cost of that progress to so many people's lives, and to recognize what we can do as a community to write a different history, to write and to do so with integrity. It is the beginning of Black History Month, and that is one of those occasions where we endeavor to do what I've just been describing or trying to describe. And second thing I was reflecting on this morning before I came here, and as I'm sitting in the crowd and hearing our senator speak and others, that the new administration in Washington issued directive this week that federal agencies are no longer to recognize Black History Month and are no longer to recognize a number of special occasions that we have, as a nation, as a culture, as a community, decided to recognize so that we could understand and that we could pave a different path forward. And I was thinking to myself that we're here at Community Health Center, and I see Mark and his team in the back, and thank you for hosting us and for the role that you play in this community every single day. CHC is what many people know is referred to as a FQHC, a federally qualified health center. They receive benefits and funding from the federal government to be able to provide care, health care, medical care, to those who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford it. And it occurs to me, as I'm sure it has to you, Mark, and to others, that we're taking actually a little bit of a risk here by being in this place and acknowledging Black History Month on a day like today in the way that we are doing, because we are in an environment where there are still people in power who would do what those people did generations ago when they doctored that will, when they challenged it in court, when they said we're not going to abide by anything other than a legal system, a political system, a societal system that is going to allow us to take back this power, to take back this liberation from this person. If there is a way to make money, if there's a way to consolidate power and hold on to it, people will find it. And we're still in a culture and in a time when that would happen, and that is happening. And it takes courage for us to be here, and it takes courage for us to do the type of work, whether it's providing free health care or studying our own history and acknowledging it. Again, grateful to be in a community that is courageous in that way. And Just the third thing that is cause for reflection is I've had a pretty good seat here. I've been looking out at the sign over the past hour and looking out at sort of Middletown happening and passing by and seeing kids coming in and out of the police activity league across the street, seeing people walking and biking, looking down Rapallo Avenue, Prince Mortimer Avenue at the railroad bridge down there and trying to imagine where the mansion might once used to have been, and just thinking about our obligation, which is written in generations, right, to make sure that we leave something behind for the next generation that honors our work and those who came before us. What is this going to look like in 110 years, Prince Mortimer's lifespan? What is it going to look like in 300 years? This is the period of history that we're talking about, and it's. I was Councilwoman Sweeney. We were together. I see Councilman Lafredo in the back. A few of us were up at the Department of Transportation yesterday, talking about infrastructure plans for Route 9 and for this area, and it's Rapallo Avenue specifically, Prince Mortimer Avenue specifically, is the subject right now of an environmental justice study at the U.S. EPA, and these questions are being asked and answered, and again, we don't know what that's going to look like under the current regime. We don't know if there's going to be the same type of emphasis in our national government on trying to make sure that the past history is acknowledged and corrected as we build forward. But to be able to sit here and look out at the street and to look out at the community where these histories, where these stories are our truth, and to acknowledge and understand our own role in history, which is not something in the past. It is something that we are a part of. It's a present thing, and whatever comes next is also part of our history. So these are my reflections as I have sat here and tried to find words that are sufficient to this occasion, to this moment. And I think more than anything else, your presence here is incredibly meaningful as we begin the celebration of Black History Month in the city of Middletown, and as we recognize Prince Mortimer and dedicate this street corner and this corner of our community to his history and to his memory. Thank you so much.
Yes. I recognize that, the incoming administration and what things like this may mean. And I also see it as an act of activism that we're all here. I see it the same way, so I appreciate your words. Something you said, I realized that I was thoughtful in trying to, design the cover of the program. And some of those pictures on there, it's a merge of three different things, right? It's like the main focus of the picture is an image that I got out of a book that I received from Deb Shapiro of what Rapallo Avenue used to be, that walkway that led to Philip Mortimer's house, and it was called the Avenue of Buttonwood Trees because there were Philip Mortimer planted buttonwood trees on either side of that path, and he opened it up like a park so that the residents of Middletown could walk down that path. There were benches, and they could sit under the trees. During the Revolutionary War, the French army was said to have come, and they were dancing under those trees, and they carved names in those trees. Like, it was truly a historic path that Charles Rapallo tore down. But yeah, so that's what that image is what it used to look like. That's an image coming up Rapallo on your program. And also in the lower left corner of that program is a 1783 map that I found at the State Library. And I was doing a presentation once, and in the presentation I was trying to show what each thing was on this map. And so that's the wording where it's showing, here's the Avenue of Buttonwood Trees, here's Philip Mortimer's mansion. So that's what that is on your program. So I just wanted to give you guys some context of what you're seeing on the front of the program. And then on the inside, within the program, the background is down Main Street where the rope walk was. And you can see on the left side of the inside of the program, that long building. Like it's really, rope walks were as long as the longest rope that you had to make. So if he thought he was going to be making, rope that was going to be 1,000 foot long, then the building had to be at least 1,000 feet long. And so rope walks were odd shaped buildings. They'd be like 40, 50 feet wide by 1,000 feet long. And so when they were depicting that on this 1783 map, that's what you see in the background within this odd shaped building that they were depicting that used to sit here on Main Street. I traveled to Chatham, UK last year because it was the only place I could find in the world that still had a full-length rope walk. I know here at Mystic we have a portion of one, but that one is fully functional, fully operational, still being used, and it's from the mid-1700s. So I went there and took some pictures of that, which will be a part of the program in a moment. But before that, I want to welcome up to speak some of the Lieutenant Governor just mentioned earlier with regards to her work and the importance of sites like this here in Connecticut, and that is the Outreach Director of the Connecticut Freedom Trail, Tammy Denise. Don't trip on that.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Greetings, everyone. Let me say, having the Lieutenant Governor call you out, there's no pressure. There's no pressure. Thank you so very much for being here. We really appreciate you coming out on a Saturday to pay honor and respect to a man's legacy and dignity that he was denied in life. John, I really appreciate all of your hard work. John and I have been together about 3 years now. And when I saw the work that he was doing and Prince Mortimer's story, that's when it became a trail within a trail for the Connecticut Freedom Trail. Now, the Connecticut Freedom Trail was established in 1995 by the General Assembly to tell the Black narratives and the contributions to Connecticut from the Black perspective. Then it opened September 1996, which was a year later, in 60 towns with 30 sites. And the mission is to have a site in all 169 municipalities. As of today, we have upwards of 180 sites in 70 towns. So my job is to come into the community, educate everyone about the Connecticut Freedom Trail. Because a lot of times people see the sign and they know that it says Connecticut Freedom Trail, but they are not really sure what it means. So my job is to come into the community, educate, let everyone know what that is about, why it's so significant, and the importance of it. So if you know of any historical sites, let me tell you what some of those are. It could be an ancient burying ground, private homes, museums, plaques. It's just some way to honor that history and to let people know that Black people were in every corner of Connecticut and played a very significant role in the making of this state. So I really appreciate being able to come here and to be a part of this story. Prince Mortimer's Trail is the first trail within a trail on the Connecticut Freedom Trail. And I like to brag about the Connecticut Freedom Trail because we go from one side of the state to the other, top to bottom. Some places have limited spaces or limited areas for their Freedom Trail, but our trail covers the entire state. And it is the jewel of Connecticut, but it has been slightly hidden. So that's why I do what I do. So if you know of any of these special places, or if you know of any stories that I can investigate, that I can bring back to the CFT committee so that we can add those stories as well to continue to highlight. But today is about Prince Mortimer, and we appreciate I appreciate personally being able to stand here to be a part of this historic day. And it is historic because not only do we get to see a Black man's name above an enslaver's name, but we get to hear his story, and we get to draw strength from that, and we get to understand the resiliency, celebrate determination, and celebrate pride and dignity in these narratives. So thank y'all so very much again for coming out. John, thank you for including the Connecticut Freedom Trail, because a lot of his work crisscrosses with the Freedom Trail, and that's why it was so important that we added his corporation to the Connecticut Freedom Trail. So I appreciate all the work that you and Miss Erica and Jasmine does. So thank y'all so very much.
Yeah, it was critical that I Tammy's the person to know. You know, I had to cross paths with Tammy. I'm over here researching all these people. Tammy was the person to know. And finally, in closing, I wanted to have something that kind of depicted Prince Mortimer. You know, all these people tend to be faceless, right? And my third great grandfather's faceless, my second great grandfather's faceless, both enslaved. But we've got slight descriptions, but an artist's mind can look at these pieces and look at where the people were from and what the people of the area they came from, the features they had, and they could take that and through their God-given ability create something that gives us a visual, and so using those pictures that I grabbed from the Chatham rope walk in the UK, I hunted and searched out an artist that could take those pictures, take the descriptions we had. There's not very many descriptions of Prince, but we had some small little nuggets. We've got, descriptions of what Venture Smith, some pieces for him, and they were contemporaries from the exact same place, and they got here right around the exact same time. So I sent this. I found an artist, and I sent this artist all these pieces that I had, and he created with an artist's eye his rendering of what he would have looked like. And so I'll let him speak. He has painted and done murals and artwork here across Connecticut and other places. Originally from Newark, New Jersey, his name is Kern Bruce, so I'm going to welcome him up to give his words. And you probably saw him drawing like pictures of people.
I'm going to keep this brief. I'm a pretty shy, introverted guy. I speak with my art. But thank you all for participating. I personally think there's a junction between art and advocacy, turn pain into paintings. That's something I always believe in, and that's pretty much all I have to say. I don't know, I'm pretty shy, like just a lot of people. So just thank you, John, for doing this. Thank you for educating me about Prince. I learned a lot, and to think that, and I'm just, if you haven't yet, please take a look at that rope, because it's really intense to think that people had to do this by hand, thousands of feet long, with no pay, horrible conditions, and to have this man live 110 years, and to have us all be gathering here today to honor him is a beautiful thing. So with that, John, that's my piece.
We're just gonna pull the cover. I don't know. I should do it.
You should do it.
Oh. Without any further ado. Yeah. Thank you all for coming to celebrate. Me on camera? Oh, okay.
I think you probably live one day.
Okay.